Trumpet Tune by Cornelius Gurlitt is a very fast and lively tune. It's going to require slow, methodical practice in order to get it up to speed. With that said, let's take a look at how our hands are positioned in this song. The right hand is going to be in the C 5-finger scale position, but not on middle C. We're going to start on treble C. So make sure that your right hand thumb starts on treble C. And we have C, D, E, F, G. Those are our only 5 notes in this entire song. C, D, E, F, G. Our left hand, if you pay attention to the music, you'll notice that the lower staff is actually a treble staff right here. Whoops, I don't like to use purple for that. Let me change that to, sure, pink. So, it's a treble clef. If that's a treble clef, that means this one with whiskers on it, you should know as C, and the line above that is E. So we're going to start on C and E with fingers 1 and 3. So our third finger is on C, our first finger is on E. Whenever we have stacked finger numbers below or above stacked notes, you should pay attention to the order that they're stacked in, because the bottom number always goes to the bottom note, and the top number always goes to the top note. Just like that. Now, the trickiest part about what the left hand's going to do, because it only plays 4 notes. It plays C and E, and then if you look in the second measure, it goes to D, which is the top note here, 2 on D, and then your 5th finger is actually on G. So notice that if my third finger is on C right here, my 4th finger naturally falls on B, and my 5th finger naturally falls on A. But I need my 5th finger down here on this G. So the 5th finger has to stretch the entire song. The entire song, your 5th finger is here, and your second finger is here. G and D, or if you say it down to up, D to G. So it's here. The left hand is going to alternate between middle C and E and D and G, just like this, back and forth the entire time. And it's especially for young students, because their hands aren't as big as mine, this might be a big stretch for you to go from here to here. There is an alternate fingering that you can do, and I'll show it to you, but it's not as desirable because it doesn't connect as well from here to here. But if you have smaller hands, let's go back to the beginning. So instead of 1 and 3 or 3 and 1 on C and E, you can put 2 and 1. So take your second finger and put that on C. I'll put a little 2 right here as an alternate. So you can put your second finger on C and your thumb on E. And this way, because the thumb stretches much easier than the second finger, or than the pinky from the 4th finger, the thumb can stretch a long ways. So we can just put C and E like this. But then how are we going to play D and G? Well, your thumb will have to move. When I go over here and play D and G, instead of my second finger playing it, I will have my thumb play it. So my thumb will have to move here. So C and E to D and G. C and E to D and G. And it doesn't sound that bad, especially with how fast the song goes. Or if you wanted to do it the way it's written, you could go. So either this, that's the most smooth and fluid way to do it. But if your hands are still too small, then substitute for this fingering and have your thumb move back and forth from E to D every other measure. If you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to text me or email me or ask me in your next lesson, and I'll be glad to help you through that. That said, let's take a look at what the right hand's doing. The right hand is starting on C, way up here. And like I've said before, I would recommend that if you don't need to write down the name of every single note in the song, then don't do it. I would rather you focus more on being able to read finger numbers than read note names, because finger numbers are, well, when you get to more complex music, finger numbers become faster and quicker to read than notes. But in the beginning, with easier songs like this, if you need to write down every single note name, I'm not going to hold it against you. But as you start to increase in levels, I will encourage you more and more and more to back off of note names, only have a few note names written. Like when your hand has to move positions, then you need to know which note to move to. But once your hand is in a position, then you no longer need to focus on the note names, you need to focus on the finger numbers. All right, so that said, I'm going to go ahead and name all the finger numbers and the note names just for your benefit. So give me just 1 second. All right, let's take a look at the right hand. Remember, we're in the C 5-finger scale. Our thumb starting on treble C, not on middle C. So start up here. And I'm going to play just the first two measures. First two measures plus one note so that I can end at the end of that slur. And it sounds like this, nice and slow. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, so notice in this section of music, we start with a staccato and we end with a staccato. Everything else is slurred. Remember, a slur means to connect the notes smoothly, and we have a secondary slur right here. For two reasons, he broke the slur. One, it is almost impossible, unless you use pedal, which we're not using pedal in this song, to repeat a note in piano and keep it smooth. Other instruments like violins, flutes, saxophones, trombones, any of the strings or wind instruments, they can repeat notes without cutting off their breath supply. But in order for us to repeat a note, we actually have to lift our hand off the keys and then replace it. No matter how small I do that, or how quickly I do that, it still has to cut the sound off and then replace it by striking it again. So that's one reason that we have a lift right here. The second reason is that notice that we're starting on C and we're rising up to G, and then we have G and we're going back down to C. So we've kind of done a 5-finger scale, and then we're going to do a 5-finger scale going in the opposite direction. We start on a staccato, we end on a staccato. So, in order to play songs like this well, you need to start thinking in those terms, those musical terms. So, once again, lift. Now, I did that with out of time, just so I could exaggerate the lift. But make sure that when you play that double G, when you lift and play again, that you do that in time. Let's talk about the rhythm. We have quarter notes and eighth notes. Now, some of you may not know what an eighth note is, but I'm going to explain it right here. So we have these things called notes. This is a whole note, and if I cut a whole note in half, it equals 2 half notes. Then if I have a half note and I cut that in half, it equals 2 quarter notes. Well, then if I have a quarter note and I cut that in half, it equals what's called eighth notes. And the way that we show eighth notes is that if we have two or more eighth notes next to each other, we can beam them. This is called a beam. Or if we just want to use one eighth note, which happens more often than you think, then we have these things called flags, where it looks like a quarter note, but it's got a flag like this. So this and this are the same thing. So we can say that eighth notes go twice as fast as quarter notes go twice as fast as half notes, and half notes go twice as fast as whole notes. So whenever we play this, I like to tell my students, I want you to think of quarter notes as walking notes and eighth notes as running notes. So we have, starting from the beginning, we have a walk, running, walk, 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 running, running, walk. And I'm going to color code those differently so that you can see the difference. So here I have a walking note, a walking note, a walking note, walking note, walking note, and a walking note. Everything else I'm going to color blue, and those are my running notes. So once again, walk, running, walk, 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 running, running, walk. I would encourage you that if you're having trouble playing the notes and doing the correct rhythm at the same time, that you clap the rhythm, and you can be able to do that 4 or 5 times in a row without doing a mistake, and then try to play the notes with it. So, one more time, a little bit faster. 1, 2, ready, go. Walk, running, walk, 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 running, running, walk. If we take a look at the left hand is going to play C and E, and then in the next measure, D and G. Notice we play D and G right here whenever we land on the D. So the D's are going to come together at the same time. So here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Walk, running, walk, 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 running, running, walk. And that's the first 2 measures. And that's a good chunk of the entire song. If you can get the first 2 measures, then you have about 3/4 of the song learned already. Last thing we should probably note is that we are starting forte. Remember, this is called trumpet tune, and trumpets are usually very, very loud. So make sure that you play this and practice it very loud. 1, 2, ready, go. Alright, let's take a look at the next 2 measures. This measure right here, measure 3, is the exact same as measure 1. It's walk, running, walk, walk. And then in measure 4, we have walk, walk, hold. If you notice, here in measure 2, I have a D going up to a G, and then that G repeats and then goes down the 5-finger scale to C. But in measure 4, I have a D that goes up to a G, and then that G repeats, but it doesn't go down the 5-finger scale. Instead, it just holds. So measures 1 and 2 and measures 3 and 4 are almost the exact same thing. So I'm going to play all 4 measures together, right hand by itself, very slowly. 1, 2, ready, go. Walk, running, walk, 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 running, running, pop, running, walk, 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 pop, hold. The only thing here is we have a staccato. We don't have a staccato here. So make sure that you smooth this lift off as best you can. When you do the measure 2, when you have D to G, don't D, G. Now it might sound staccato when you start playing it really fast, but when you're practicing it slow, make sure you round off that note. D, G, G, F, E, D, C. But here, we have a staccato. and we want to pop off that note. D, G, G. This little mark right here is called an accent mark, and that just means to strike the note even harder. So you're playing forte, try to hit it harder than forte. It just means to hit it really hard. That's all it is. All right, one more time, all four measures. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, so if you can play the first line, then you can play the second line, because the second line is almost identical. The only difference is here. We have a D going to a G, and instead of repeating that G, we go down to C. So it's finger 2 to finger 5 to finger 1. And then we have this big rest right here. Also, another difference is the dynamic sign. In the first measure, we start off very loud, forte. But in measure 5, we start off nice and soft. It's a contrast effect that the composer is trying to go for. Whenever we play something in music and we're repeating a section, we never want to repeat that section the exact same way, because that becomes boring. So in order to make it interesting, you can either change the notes, you can change the rhythms, or you can change the dynamics. In this case, the composer said, you know what, I like the notes, I like the rhythms, I'm going to change the dynamics. So if I start from measure number 1, I'm going to play nice and loud. And then in measure 5, I'm going to play soft. And notice I got off there at the end. I got off here. I didn't hold this C out. Make sure that you get off and that there's one beat of solid rest. That beat of rest is extremely important to set you up for the next line. With that said, let's go on into the next line. The next line is completely different than anything else we've done so far. It's all quarter notes in the right hand, and the left hand has all half notes, just going between D and G and C and E. Just going back and forth between these two. The right hand is just playing a pattern of D, G, E, C. If you need to, go ahead and name your notes and put the finger numbers in. I'm going to do that myself for your benefit. So give me just 1 second. All right, now that that's all done, let's go ahead and just take a look at it nice and slowly. The left hand is playing D and G to C and E, back and forth. But if you notice in the last measure here, in measure 12, we have D and G and then D and G again. Now I would make sure that you play this D and G right here as loudly as you can. So this first one, play here and then lift your hand up and come down as hard as you can. Because this moment in the song should be the loudest moment of the piece. If I play both hands together, it'll sound like this. Whoops, I kind of slipped on that E. Let me try one more time. So that should be not only an audible cue that it's really loud, but it should be a visual cue as well. Your hand should lift and then come right back down. And I would practice that over and over and over again. Just lift, hit, lift, hit, lift, hit. Just so that you can get your fingers kind of molded to whatever shape that is for your hand. If you're doing the alternate fingering, then it would just be 1 and 5 down here, and still pinky up here. Now let's take a look at what the right hand's doing. The right hand has this little pattern. It starts on finger number 2 on D, up to G, skip down, step up to G, skip down, D, G, E, C, and it's just repeating this over and over. And then at the very end we have that D, G, G. It's a powerful moment. What is going to make this sound absolutely amazing is if you can pull off the dynamic change that's happening from measure 9 to measure 12. We have to start as softly as we can, and this crescendo, this C-R-E-S-C, is an abbreviation for the word crescendo. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start off soft, and then you're going to want to get louder. So every single measure should be just a little bit louder. Not every note. Don't focus on getting every single note louder than the one before it. Focus on 4 different dynamic levels. All together, it sounds like this. 1, 2, ready, go. Little louder, and then really loud. A little faster now. 1, 2, ready, go. I'm not going to go over the last line because the last line is the exact same as line number 2. And line number 2, as we already discussed, is almost identical to line number 1. It just ends on a C instead of a G. But the difference between line number 4 and line number 2 is that line number 2 starts mezzo piano and line number 4 starts forte. We started loud and then we're going to end loud. It's kind of like a forte sandwich, if you want to put it that way. Start loud, end loud, but in between we're going to have the soft section. This song is not the easiest song, especially for young beginners. I would practice this hands separately. Before you try to put the hands together, make sure you know your left hand very, very well, that you can alternate between the E and G the C and E and the G and D very, very well and smoothly, that you don't really have to think about it. Clap the rhythms of the right hand and be able to do that very, very well before you attempt to play it if you're having trouble with it. Focus really hard on the contrast of the staccatos to the legatos, or the staccato dots to the slur marks. We really want to hear the pop and the connection, and we don't want there to be any confusion between that. Practice slow and then you'll be able to play it fast. And that's all I have for you for this song. If you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to ask me in your next lesson or text me or email me.